Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I had promised yesterday that I'd be coming on today to get started on this chair. And this project is a little bit different because primarily I paint wood. And today we are actually going to be painting fabric. And there is no difficulty in painting fabric, although I know that it kind of scares some people. I've done a couple of chairs before. The first chair that I did had a really flat nap and it was a single color fabric. I did that with an Sloan chalk paint and sealed it with wax. Sounds weird, perfectly fine. Nothing comes off on your clothes, I swear. The second chair that I did, another huge big wingback this time, was with the DIY paint. So Debbie's Design Diary paint in a rich, dark bohemian blue with white hand-painted daisies all over it. And that one, you can go back and get some of the instructions on it and some of the photos if you want from the website. So queenbeecreations1.com, and just look under the blog posts and you'll be able to see the big daisy chair, and it will list a lot of the steps. So if you get lost in some of these videos or you want to have a reference, that's a great place to go because we're going to be following a lot of the same steps. Except there's a couple of differences here. I mean, that chair had a slight patterning to the fabric, but it was fairly flat fabric as well. It was a kind of that old rose color, right? That soft rose color, and done in a darker paint color, covered it nicely, worked out great. But it too, I sealed with wax. Now, this fabric has more of kind of a rough raised pile. My concern with this is, first of all, it's going to take paint differently. So you're definitely going to still see the patterning, which I don't mind and I'm counting on. But I was a little bit worried about what would happen with sealing it with wax. So, coupled with the fact that I really wanted to do the chair with this color from DIY. Let me see if I can even get this so you can see it. Okay, you're kind of catching it there. Kind of a periwinkle blue, right? It's called Water Lily. It's gorgeous, but my jar is almost done. There's no way I'd have enough for this piece. Contacted my local supplier here. They don't have it in stock. So I didn't want to get started with this little baby amount of paint and then find I have to wait weeks to be able to finish the chair. I'm a little too impatient for that, and I was all set to go. So I had then changed my thinking, and I thought, okay, maybe I could change up my color scheme and switch over from doing the periwinkle and white, which I thought kind of look awesome. And I thought, okay, I'll still use the DIY paint, which is wonderful paint for staining furniture, because staining the fabrics, because it's so heavily pigmented. It really does stain it. It works great. So I thought I'd do it maybe in turquoises, but I was really kind of sold on periwinkle. So I decided to go another way. There's another paint line. Fusion Mineral Paint here in Canada has its sealer built into it, but there is another paint line here in Canada called Country Chic that I have not used, but it also has its base coat and sealer built in. So I started to think about the fact that if it's got a sealer built in, then I don't have to worry about waxing into the deep pile of this. This is what I'm thinking in my head. And it works in my head, but they didn't have a periwinkle color. So I went and explored, and apparently what they say is if I mix this midnight sky color with this vintage cupcake color, which I don't know if I can get you to see this. This is a pale pink, right? Oh, maybe there. So these two colors mixed together are supposed to give me kind of a periwinkle color. And I have kind of mixed them together. Don't knock this over. And this is the color I've got. So kind of periwinkle. We'll give it a go. I'll kind of try it out. How bad could it be? So you're going to experiment along with me. I've painted fabric before. I just have not done it with this paint before. I have not done it with a thicker or slightly deeper pile before. So I got a couple of you on. So hi Madeline, hi Val. Thanks for watching. See what you think as we go along. But we're going to give it a try. The worst thing that can happen is it sucks. And this is not it's not an antique, but it is a super comfortable chair. There are a couple of little tricks to this. One, I mixed up the paint and it's 50% of the blue and 50% of the pink is supposed to make this periwinkle color. But I added water. So you want it a little bit runnier, not super runny. I'll show you kind of the texture here. We do want it to be a little bit drippy, right? So we do want it a little bit runnier because we want it to soak into the fabric. We don't want to use the paint typically straight out of the can or out of the jar, whatever the case may be, because we don't want it sitting on top of our fabric. That's where, okay, it's going to crack or it's going to look bad. We want it to sink down into our fabric. And to help that out, it means we also have to use a lot of water. So for this, I have a spray bottle that's going to help me soak the fabric, not just lightly mist it. So you can use one of your old cheapo dollar store ones. That's perfect. We don't want a light misting. We want to really wet the fabric. We don't want to soak it all the way through that we're soaking right down into all of the foam and the padding and the layers underneath it though. So we want to get it down into the fabric. We don't want to have water rolling off, but it does mean we have to use a lot of water. And if the paint is a little bit diluted and a little bit runnier, it helps it soak in as well. So we want to start with piece that, okay, there we go. A piece that is cleaned off as good as well as you can. And it's great to use old furniture for this, but you're going to want to use furniture that the fabric is still in decent shape. We're not recovering it. So if there's rips or tears, they're not going to be hidden by the paint. All right. So I get some people that, you know, they look and they're showing me these pieces and I'm going, okay, that fabric's in awful shape. Yeah, that's why I want to paint it. Anyway, no, that's not what the paint will do. The paint is not going to fix your fabric, but it will cover over it, right? So I do have a bigger brush that all I'm going to use this for is just kind of helping to brush some of that paint, that water. So it's my water brush. We'll see how long I remember that before I use it by mistake. But we're just going to want to get this wet. And I'm only working in sections because by the time that I get all of this wet, it's already starting to dry and it's going to be miserable. So I'm going to work in sections. I am going to have to do a number of coats. So I don't know yet how well this paint is going to cover. So I really don't know how much. Oh, shoot. I'm looking down at my jeans and I realize I just bought a new pair because all my jeans are covered in paint. And these are the ones I'm wearing. I'm not supposed to wear these for painting. So you guys, make sure I don't get paint on my jeans. Oh, Lord. I tell you, everything I own is paint covered. Okay, sorry. Time for the glasses now. So what we want to do is kind of dip this into our paint and we want to start dabbing it. Hey, hi, Jeannie. So glad you guys are joining me. We'll kind of experiment. So the difference is with this is because we want it to get down into the fabric. You're going to do a lot more of kind of a scrubbing motion with the brush. right? We're going to have to try and kind of scrub it down in, because ultimately we want the paint to be staining the fabric. We're not just painting over the top of the surface. We want that paint to be getting down into the fabric. So we want to work it down in. And can't tell if you guys can see it, but you can see that all this patterning, which is these squares, still comes through when it's patterning that is built into the fabric and the nape of the fabric. That's still going to come through, which gives it some distinction, gives it some dimension, which is very cool. If you had a fabric that had big, colorful roses and florals all over it, and you were trying to go to a light color, let's say it was a really dark navy and big, bold pink hibiscus flowers all over it, and you're going, okay, I'm going to paint this white, expect to be doing a lot of coats. And even then, I can't guarantee you that you're not going to get some of it showing through. So if you're looking at wanting to experiment with this, go with something that's, a more solid base color, so that you're going to get a little bit more of a uniform look overall when you're using this technique. You can use something like I am that has some texture into it, but you're going to want a piece that has good bones to it too, still. And I will always choose, because this is the messy part, right? This is the part that's a little bit more involved, is painting the fabric, a little less guaranteed about exactly where my paint is going. Hence the time I should not be having the new jeans on. But I will paint the wood after, because I have more control. I could use a smaller detail brush getting up into it. So I will always typically recommend that you would paint the wood part last, that you paint the fabric first. There's people that do opposites, so hey, whatever floats your boat, whatever works for you better. I'm open to anything that works, but you can see that it really doesn't take all that long to do this. The difference is really kind of push your paint into those crevices. I don't agonize over getting it right down in, because you're never going to see that, right? So you really want to be able to focus on where you're going to see this and how it's going. So Jeannie we've got, and Nell we've got. Thanks for joining me. So I'm checking out the color as we go, and this is looking kind of periwinkle. So so whoever did that color formula for this paint, you're awesome. So more power to you. And I will say this about, oh Lord, I don't even remember the name of the paint that I bought to try this out. Country Chic. So never used it before. Obviously I don't have any stake in the company because I didn't even know what it was. It's a Canadian company based in Vancouver as well. So when I was researching what paint and what distributors in the area, and I wanted to try something this time with a sealer built in, because again, because of the raised fabric, I wasn't sure how it would take wax, which is often what I've sealed with in the past. And I have to tell you, if you've got a flat fabric, wax seals it beautifully, and it makes the texture of that fabric feel almost like a really soft, kind of supple, almost a leather feel to it. And I've got an armchair, a small antique armchair up in our bedroom that I did in an Annie Sloan kind of taupe color originally, and then the white wood, and it has held up to 3 years of use, 3 years, I guess, in the bedroom. And that's with my husband sitting in it and using it, snacking up there, watching television, the grandkids coming, people throwing coats on it. So I had waxed that piece, and it's been great. It's been beautiful. So I haven't had to treat it again. People always wonder about paint coming off or the wax coming off. There's There's no issues with any of those. This, because I couldn't really, normally you would maybe sand in between paint coats. I'm not going to be able to sand this because of all the raised texture. It's just not going to work evenly. So that's why I wanted this project to try a different paint, one that has that built-in sealer and see how that works for us. Again, in my head, it's the perfect solution, but that's usually how it goes. These things are always great in my head, and then we have to see how they turn out in real life. Right. I kept so again, you kind of almost scrub this in because we want it to soak into that fabric and down into that pile, right? Definitely going to take 2 coats. So I'm going to just kind of carry on with this. So again, you are using your spray bottle of water, wetting the fabric, kind of making sure that you dampen it. That helps that paint to be able to soak down into it. You're using diluted paint. So whatever kind of paint you want to use, you're diluting your paint and you're painting into the fabric in that kind of scrubbing motion. And you can see that already it's going on fairly evenly. It's going to dry, quite honestly, it'll probably dry a little bit splotchy. Okay? Expect that. That's just normal in terms of you know, the fabric, the wear, that kind of thing. Once you do a second coat, that all kind of evens out a little bit. So pretty good with just about any kind of fabric. This is the biggest pile that I have done this with, which is one of the reasons I want to use a paint with a self-sealer built in, just because in the past I've used wax to seal it and didn't really want to do that. I didn't think that I'd be able to get the wax into or through the pile very evenly. It would probably be very uncomfortable. Hey Patty, nice to see you. So I decided to try this time using the paint with the self-sealer. But already you can kind of see this is already changing the whole look and feel of the piece, switching it from this kind of this old lady kind of, I bought it from an old lady. So nothing against her, but you know, it's kind of this old grandma kind of look, right? My grandma had furniture like this. Super comfortable chair though. So I'm not sure that my husband's going to want me to get rid of this one when it's done, because I've caught him sitting in it while it's been sitting here in the middle of the living room. He's liking it better than his chair. So what I'm going to do is carry on doing exactly the same thing over the whole piece. So I've got the sides to do, the back to do, these sections. I'm just going to spray them with water and scrub the paint down into them as I've been doing while you've been here with me, and get it all done. Now, before I would go to do a second coat, I'm going to want this coat to dry pretty thoroughly. So I'm going to let it go overnight to be able to dry before I'm going to want to do my second coat, because I'm going to want to make sure that that second coat is going on nice and evenly, that I'm going to get it into where I want it to, and then I'm going to be able to cover it. I'm thinking right now, the way this paint is going on and the way that the color is sinking into the fabric, that I am likely to be able to get away with just 2 coats. We'll see once that second coat dries. So I'm not convinced one way or the other yet. We'll see how it goes. But I'm thinking 2 coats is all I'm going to need. Okay, Patty, I am actually experimenting with a completely new paint for me. I had wanted to do, I wanted to use Water Lily, the beautiful periwinkle color from DIY paint, and I have done a chair in DIY before. But two things. One, my supplier, my local supplier, doesn't have that color. And I didn't want to wait a couple of weeks. I wanted to do this now. I'd already said I was going to be doing this, and then I discovered I didn't have enough of that color. So, but I was sold in my head that I wanted to do a periwinkle color. And then I also started to think about this, and usually in the past when I have done chairs with fabric, I have sealed them with wax. Because this has a raised fabric to it, I was not sure how the wax would work. I wouldn't be able to work it down into the crevices, and I didn't want to have too much of it stuck into all the raised sections of it. So I decided it was a good time to experiment with trying an all-in-one paint. I've used Fusion in the past, but I had also heard some things about, so Fusion Mineral Paints, which is a Canadian-based paint company, but I know that it's available in the States if you happen to be there. So I also discovered that there is an additional Canadian company that does a self-sealing paint. So it comes with the primer and sealer built in, called Chic. When I went looking at colors, because I was kind of sold on this whole periwinkle thing already, and as much as I had to let the DIY color go in my head, I still wanted the periwinkle. So when I started looking at them, Chic had some bolder colors, which Fusion doesn't tend to have as many strong, bold colors. They're more in kind of the farmhouse kind of softer tone line, right? So beautiful colors, but not what I was going for with this piece. They didn't have a periwinkle color either. Figures. So they did have a color chart, though, on their website with some mix suggestions. So they had some color swatches. Sorry, my dog is sleeping down at my knees, of course, and she rolls over and would send my paint flying. So they seemed to have a color that looked like periwinkle, which was a combination of their midnight sky color, and which is kind of like a navy royal blue, and their vintage cupcake color, which before I went, since I didn't know what it looked like, I was sort of thinking in my head it was going to be white. It's pink. It's like, if you know the DIY line, it's kind of like a petticoat pink, but it's a soft kind of baby girl kind of pink. And the two of them make this, which is periwinkle, which is awesome. So again, whoever came up with that color blending, thank you very much. That's awesome. So I mixed up the colors together. I added some water. And so we're working with a diluted amount of that. And again, we're just hoping that it works out. It's an experiment, but working with a deeper pile or a little bit more texture piece is an experiment too. And you just do these things, right? How are you going to find out? So that's what we're doing. It looks like it's taking wonderfully. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on with this piece. Y'all probably don't want to sit here for the next hour just watching me do everything that you just seen me do. So I'm going to carry on with this piece, and then we'll let it dry. We'll see how it looks, and we'll take a look at it together tomorrow. And then I'll bring you on with me to not only take a look at it, but then to start laying down the second coat so that you can start to see the difference that second coat makes. But fingers crossed, it's just going to need those two coats, and then I can start on painting the wood. And I actually got one of their colors, which is I think called Simplicity, which is their bright white, because I wanted the contrast. And I'll try that on the wood so that I, at least, since I haven't tried this paint line before, that I could see what it would look like or feel like on just the wood as well. Are you going to paint the wood? Yeah, oh, there you go, Patty. Yes, I'm going to paint it white so that I have the contrast of the periwinkle and the white. And I think it's just going to just brighten up this chair and make it really light, really kind of sweet and pretty. I think it's going to look great. And again, you guys can even see some of this texture coming through the paint, which is going to give it some interest and some detail. At first I was thinking maybe I'd be painting some flowers on it, but I don't think so. Right now I'm kind of looking at it and really digging the pattern coming through and those geometric squares. So I think that letting that sit as it is and then doing the white is going to be enough. So I'm going to carry on. You guys get to carry on with your afternoon. So awesome for you. Thanks for joining me. And then I'll pop back on tomorrow. I'm thinking of my schedule. It's kind of crazy tomorrow. I've got a lot of coaching calls. I'll do this in between somewhere, wherever that happens to be, probably a little closer to lunch. And I'll show you what it looks like dried, and then we'll start adding in our next coat, and we'll see how that looks as well and how that's covering. But right now it's kind of working out okay. So nothing bad to say about this paint so far. And again, whoever came up with that color mix for me, you're awesome. Okay, so Patty, you gotta love, see, this kind of got the same pattern. So you've got a vested interest in seeing how this turns out. So honey, I will be totally honest with you as to what I see live, because I know that sometimes it looks way better in the camera than it did close up or live. But my idea would be ultimately to sell this again if my husband lets me, because he really liked how comfy it was. But I would be selling it, and it's got to be awesome. It's got to have worked out perfectly if I'm going to be selling the piece. So if it does not turn out to be something I'm comfortable selling or that I think is saleable, I will let you know before you put paintbrush to your fabric. So you'll have an idea as we go. So thanks for joining me today. Hope to see you tomorrow, but you can at least catch it in the replay. At any time for any of these quick mini tutorials that I'm doing on some of the furniture, as you're just kind of watching as I paint along. If you miss any of them, I am uploading them to YouTube as well. So you can catch them there, which is Queen Bee Creations on YouTube. And, you know, sometimes it's easier to go there than it is to scroll back through Facebook if you miss something. So either way, they're going to be on Facebook. They're going to be ultimately uploaded to YouTube. So if you miss anything, catch us there. Okay, thank you. Cindy Daychuk with Queen Bee Creations. Thanks for joining me, and wish me luck. Thanks, guys.